I've never seen a diamond in the flesh. I cut my teeth on wedding rings.
Dude, that's pretty cool.
Man, that is a sad clown.
Dude, that's pretty good.
This is The Gloom, bringing you weekly interviews with F3Omaha packs, exploring their F3 experiences and finding those sticky elements that create the glue in the gloom.
Wow, and you know what? I want to first thank Slow Pitch for texting in the group text message with Plague and I, saying, hey, Plague, he's getting unruly. He's had too much talking on these podcasts. We want to hear more of the people's voice, that being me. So thank you, Slow Pitch, for that. Certainly glad you're here. Just as a quick introduction, we've got an individual who I actually thought was the father of the Ryder brothers, not necessarily the oldest brother, but I think the first time I met Slow Pitch, I said, hey, man, you're killing it out here. Like, how did your kids get you out here? Hey, man, I'm actually the oldest brother. And so we've got Slow Pitch here today. Certainly glad you're here, man. Want to start off, I guess, how did you get started? Who brought you out? How did you get the name Slow Pitch?
It's tough to, get your thoughts together after you kind of listen to that, thinking that you have the appearance of being a father of a 40-year-old and a 30-some-year-old. Doesn't mean that I've worn age very well. But so realistically, I got two brothers, right? Both of them are in F3. Both of them inquired. They knew that I was trying to make some physical changes in a positive way, in which I was slowly chipping away at some things. I had an event in my life that really opened my eyes to wanting to change something. I just didn't know what. I just knew that there was some sort of inner alignment that may have been off. And so I was more receptive to some change. So the first thing I did was I quit drinking Diet Coke. And I did that. And my problems didn't go away. However, then I was at the time I was participating in a sport that I love, and it's softball. And so Bubbles had called me. I'd heard those guys talking about this F3 thing and monkey humpers and just other individuals' nicknames. And there's this guy out there with some tan pants, that they refer to as khakis, and it was always khakis this, khakis that, and monkey humpers, and you just feel like you're left out of any sort of conversation at the dinner table. And so really Bubbles got me right before the 1-year anniversary and said, hey, we're doing this cool thing. It's a 1-year anniversary. We'd love for you to be there. And I was sitting in the parking lot of Aldi off 132nd and Center for some reason. I have no idea why. And it was after a softball game. I just said, I don't know if I'll be there, but if I'm there at 7:00, then you'll see me. And if I'm not, then I'm not, and he's like, okay. So I asked my wife, I said, hey, do you mind if I go check this thing out? And she's like, I guess if you want, and I did. And Boys Town was really just about 6 blocks from my house. So I went over there and pulled up, and here were all these guys, that were having a good time. Right. And, Bubbles had mentioned, he's like, hey, just whatever you do, don't tell Adrian that you're coming. And so I showed up, and Waffle House and Wait Time were standing there. There's a table there. And I didn't know what to do with my keys. That was like that was the biggest thing. I was like, where do my keys go? And so Wait Time, he comes up, he's like, hey, how are you? He introduced himself. And I'm just like, what do guys do with their keys? He's like, well, you can put them in your wheel well, I guess, or just leave them with your car. It just made me feel really nervous. So go through that whole that workout that day. It was a huge celebration. And at that time, Wait Time kind of gave a COT and allowed others to discuss, or I think read, I can't remember if it was a poem or there was something, and people had read segments of it. And then they asked me, I was, at this point you're blacked out, right? Like you don't know if you're still breathing. And so somebody, they get you out there and they say, what do you do? And I'm like, the first thing I say is like, I've been sober for 12 years and I play softball. And somebody goes, slow pitch. And it was like that quick. And I think it was one of the White brothers. It was probably Ponzi or something, but that had said it. And so that's the long-winded version of that.
You kind of touched on, and you don't have to get too specific here, but, looking for some things to change in your life. I mean, when you heard about F3, were you looking to hop on the fitness journey? Were you looking to make some buddies? I mean, can you kind of expand that? And then how did that change for you over time, if it did?
Yeah. So I had gone to the gym for a few years, right? And I don't know if anyone's ever done it. Pony, there's a book, it's called Free to Lead. It kind of discusses a little bit in there about the individual that goes to the gym and really doesn't get the returns that one would like. And so I did that with a coworker. We'd go every day, and I would just really avoid any sort of discomfort, right? So I'd get on the elliptical, and you do the elliptical for 15 minutes thinking, I really hope I lose 50 pounds doing this. And then you'd kind of go and like for me, I'd go maybe put some weights on the bench because, and I didn't want to take direction from anybody, and I didn't want to ask because then that's a full on commitment. But so, you'd go do these, whatever things that you're familiar with. And I really had zero progress in that. And at the time I couldn't even, I was about 50 pounds heavier. And so I couldn't even run on the treadmill for, for a half mile, right? I mean, things blacked out. So do that over lunch, not really getting anywhere. The thing is I wanted to get healthier. I didn't want the discomfort, right? I don't like the pain portion. Getting in shape is not, I would not say is easy, right? And so you want the path of least resistance. And I had hoped that by walking on the treadmill or doing an elliptical that I'd get there, and it didn't. And the consistent theme with it is the hollowness inside, right? And so I've come to understand, like, what do I need to do to make a change? And it comes with discomfort. And so how long can you be uncomfortable with things before you say, all right, that's it? And that's where it had come to, right? So I had this event. It was something I behaved in a manner in which it was fairly aggressive towards some family members. And I didn't need to behave that way. My kids got to witness me be threatening, right, to their uncle and their grandparents, my wife's family, on Christmas Eve day. And it was a real low point for me, right? I've been sober for 12 years, and this was my natural sober behavior. And that's what really sucked, is there was nothing I didn't have any other excuses, right? Like nothing to say you behave this way because you were under the influence of whatever. It was, that's you, and so it scared me. So I started to try to figure out what is it that is there something I need to change, right? And it's spiritually, physically, you just don't feel good yourself. And so that's why I came back and started running on a treadmill, started doing it with a purpose. And then I just continued to go maybe another quarter mile, then maybe another quarter mile. And then you change the grade. And I started to see some results, and I tried to eat better. And so by the time I was intersected with my brothers for F3, I was open to it because I had already had enough pain internally, and I knew that I was trying to make this change, right? And so the gap to step from where I was to where I wanted to go wasn't as wide. It was okay. If you're asking me 6 months ago, there's no way because that's ridiculous and it's too much work. You ask me today, you've caught me because I feel lesser than, things hurt inside, and I need to be moving towards some positive change. And that's really, sometimes I think we just want to get fit or more physical. Well, why is that, right? And there was an emptiness inside of me, some things that I was just missing, and that helped. I think that helps me towards the path of wanting to become more whole, however that is internally, if that made any sense.
That makes a ton of sense. And I know this is maybe Pony's first time doing the intro, but I like to explain to people some of the things that that you have done, because guys may not know. So not only starting F3, but you took over the site Q role at Paradise Island, did a fantastic job leading there. Have recently taken on a role as Weasel Shaker. You are consistently the guy, when we interview people, or even when I just talk to guys, you're the guy that they reference as who reached out to them the day after their first, second, third workout that encouraged them to come back. And what some people may not know, if depending on the version of Free to Lead they're reading, is that you're also an author these days. And there is a chapter in there, and honestly, as I've got it pulled up, I'm reading some of the stuff from it, and I won't read it to everybody, but it's a little bit emotional, because I hear so much of my own story in your story, and I think you're so relatable to so many guys, and so just when I hear you, even what you think is a rant, several things I can pull out of there that are they hit home with so many of us. And so I guess this is my way of saying thank you. One thing I will quote from here, though, is you said, I gained significant weight by eating huge portions, tons of sweets, guzzling diet soda, and not exercising at all. I would tell myself that it's all right. And since I had given up on alcohol, drugs, and tobacco, I had earned it. And thus the sad clown was born. Guy, I would encourage guys to go out there and get a new copy. I think we get some kickbacks from F3 Nation. They send Pony a check, if we sell new versions. But the other thing I wanted to ask you about, Slow Pitch, is because you talk about in this story kind of you were sober, right? You were doing the right thing, but you still had this emptiness inside. Yeah. And as you journeyed through, first, second, and third F, was it the leadership opportunities? Was it the relationships? What do you think it was that really helped propel you to where you are now?
So there's a number of things, right? So you have the first F3 workout. My second F3 workout was Wednesday. It was Paradise. And so I hated push-ups. They hurt my elbows, my shoulders, it hurts, right? And I can hear things grind, and Bubbles said, it's a running site. They never do push-ups. And Ethanol did the deck of cards, and every single card he pulled out was like 25 Merkins, 25 Workins, 25 Chuck Norris Merkins. It was just like, we did like 300 Merkins that day. And all we'd do is we'd run on the top of the parking garage. You do one 100-yard loop, and then just come do another 25 to 50 Merkins. And I hated it. But I tell you that because that was when you were the site Q there, you reached out to me afterwards. Khakis reached out to me afterwards. And you were just like really just kind of enthusiastic about the effort that's put out there. Even when I was just gassed, and really it's just like just showing up, and it was tough, and I hated it. And so the two of you guys really started to ping me at least once or twice a week, just kind of keeping me folded, close. And one thing I know about being in a 12-step program is there's really only about a 10% success rate. And one of my beliefs is why that's so low is because of the lack of connection that people have when they're in that fellowship. And so I had talked to Tater when we were on vacation once about, what's the rate of return, right, of people that come back. And he said, a lot of people fall off. And I just said, well, I think if you have more effort with that, trying to connect with people, maybe they continue to come back and come back and come back. It's very similar to the 12-step rooms in my mind. The guys that stay are the guys that have a larger network within there. And so, my sponsor told me once, he's like, look, you got to build your network wherever you're at, because there's going to be days that I don't answer. There's going to be days I don't want to answer. There's going to be days I'm just too busy. And I think that goes with really also with F3 is if you start to build that network, you feel, I don't want to say obligated, but more a part of. And so you continue to come back with more and more. And then for me, I want to share those experiences with other people, right? So I felt like what was given to me was a gift, whether I knew it or not, but then to reach out to another person, just to let them know, man, hey, somebody's paying attention to you, keep coming back. And so with that piece alone, and there's a little piece, I don't want to reference, the essay that much, but it's the truth is I'm so inspired by the guy that comes in the first time, right? Like, what you've done every single morning up to that point, right? You wake up, maybe people hit the snooze, maybe people have breakfast, maybe whatever it is, your daily agenda, get kids ready. I don't care. But the day that you decided to come to F3 that day was a different way of thinking, right? You had to get the courage to do it. Somebody convinced you to do it, right? You're putting on tennis shoes for maybe the first time for some of us to actually work out in, right? Like not just, mow the yard in, but you're actually going to do something physical in it. And so I don't ever want to forget that feeling, right? I don't ever want to forget the feeling of what it was like that first day I put on my shoes and I'm scared, right? And I know that I'm going to be uncomfortable and I'm going to be around some people I don't ever know. And so part of that, is I want to remember that. And then I also want those individuals to know, hey man, you've inspired some people, whether or not you meant it or not. You inspired me. You showed up, you got out of your comfort zone, you're doing something that it takes courage to do. And I wish I could do that with regularity with all aspects of my life. Because that's hard, So the reality is that it's a repetitive behavior that when I reach out to people, it's not anything I thought of, right? It's because that was what somebody else did for me. And it made a huge difference to showing up to somebody says, where are you going tomorrow? Well, I didn't plan on going tomorrow, until somebody says, well, okay, we're going to be at, we'll be wherever. And you go, okay. You just kind of show up. So it's an extremely important part to F3, whether or not people know it or not. I think it's in order to continue to have people, that little gift you put in somebody's pocket, we gotta be connecting with those people on a regular basis. So
yeah, not only is it important, but it's really quite simple, right? It's just taking the time to ask the question, hey, what are you doing tomorrow? Are we pre-running? I know you hit me up every Monday night, where are we going running? And 9 times out of 10 I'm like, I can't make it, but you still hit me up every week. So I mean, it's really an easy thing to do that I could challenge myself to do better with other packs, because you hit on something that I think is very important, like that new feeling, it goes away. So are there things that we can do to keep that feeling around a little bit longer? Can you be holding people more accountable? Can you just be reaching out saying, hey, I miss you, or hey, you did a great job today? Those things really matter to people and probably do keep people coming back, right? Hitting on that retention rate. I like how you talked about the 12 step and how there is this a piece of accountability. You got to come back, but then once you come back, you're starting to build your network. And that kind of plays into like this idea of a shield lock or building your group within F3. Do you feel like that has been your experience? Once you did, you started to come regularly, how did you kind of build that out, and how did that kind of form for you?
So anybody that knows me, and specifically early on, that there's time for a conversation, there's time for exercise, and really not time to combine those things, right? So I would, you'd be exercising next to Plague, and you're like, Plague. I gave him one of the best all-time evers, which was really you gotta can it. And he was getting he was up for an interview at work, and we were running at Spike, and I'm just gassed. Like I'm seeing stars, I can hear fireworks going off in my eardrums. And so Plague is talking about potentially what he's going to have a conversation in the interview process, and he goes, well, what do you think? And I just said, let partner breathe. you know, and that was me. That was me. And so the reality is like, you're talking shield lock and stuff like that. You know, it's the effort that you see, you know, every morning in exercising. That's one thing. And the laughter and you know, I love having opportunities to be by guys I don't know, and the little banter and the conversation and stuff like that. But the time that I've enjoyed the most is the times before the workouts, right? I hate running. I really do. The thing that gets me to do that is because I love the interaction with those individuals. So I don't know if that's considered a shield lock or not, but I do know that my conversations and my relationship had developed and grown with you, Pony, based on pre-runs, right? And where you've been vulnerable and you've given me pieces of your life in that time. And I know the same things happen with Plague when, you know, we're running, we're having conversation, discussion. And those, I think, are the more intimate pieces, because it's not, you know, 15, 30 person strong. Sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 5. And so if it's an actual defined shield lock, I don't know. But what I do know is it serves the purpose of what that definition would be, which is accountability, vulnerability, you know, sharing pieces and trying to get solutions and direction and with some challenges in life. And really just kind of growing that love for another human being, another man. So that's kind of what those times for me have become. Is if that's a shield lock, great. If it's not a shield lock, well, then I don't know what you call it, but it's special in my mind. So.
I love that. The best part about that story too was my response when you said sometimes you gotta let your partner breathe, was like, wow, that's super good insight. Like I should let them talk in the interview, you know. And, and I just remember you being like, no, I'm talking about me. Let me breathe right now. Really good. You know, something we haven't really talked much about with other folks on the podcast is the idea of a whetstone, right? So you're mentoring relationships, but because that's something you're familiar with, both as a, you know, from the 12-step program, having like a sponsor or being a sponsor, where do you see that within F3? Do you see there being some future opportunity there? Or you feel like we already do some of that, or how do we get to leveraging some of the guys with great experience and wisdom to sort of coach or teach our younger guys?
So Q-Source is probably one of the greatest resources that I think F3 has. It's extremely similar to other, you know, rooms that I participate in, because you're talking about a topic, a solution, how to live life on life terms, you know. And so mentorship is really tough, I think, sometimes if you're just doing it while you're running and doing Merkins and you got a grinder, right? Like that's, you know, what, you know, and it's really, I think, how does that even happen? You know, I think people have to, you know, see where somebody, you know, how they behave in life, you know, what are their experiences? They got to hear those things. They got to hear the, you know, the kind of the truth. And then there's got to be some connectivity where somebody trusts to be mentored. Not everybody wants to be mentored, right? Like that's the truth too. And some people aren't here to like, hey, hopefully I can find somebody that will help guide me through life. That's not everybody's agenda. You know, I think that mentorship and where somebody is receptive to being mentored is really an intersection of what's going on in people's lives, right? Like if I'm looking to be mentored, there has to be something going on, events going on that I'm open to that, right? And whether or not I'm the one who sees it or somebody else sees it, you know, maybe something that has to be pointed out. But I believe in, you know, for me and in my marriage, having a sponsor in 12 steps was really tough for her, because she wanted me to express all those things, right? All those troubles, all those difficult pieces with her. And so she would feel left out if I'd go to my sponsor and be like, hey, this is what's going through my mind. Here's something that's heavy. But the truth is that I don't want to say that my wife isn't capable of holding those things. I couldn't be completely transparent with her because some of the issues are with my behavior towards her. How do I act, as if? And one of the things about sponsorship or mentorship to me is you have somebody with a 100% objective, non-emotional attachment to what you're going through. And so if you act, if you ask them for direction or you tell them something that's going on, they can provide solutions. And if you have the willingness to follow through on those solutions, maybe your life gets in, maybe it improves, the situations improve. And I found out through sponsorship, my finances, my relationships, my profession, all those things I had talked to my sponsor about before I made any decisions, right? I was in debt quite a bit when I first got sober. I was single. I had a wife that didn't know anything about sobriety, or a girl that I was dating that didn't know anything about sobriety. So all these things I had to ask somebody else. And I think the biggest, one of the traps of being either a male or a human is the belief that I got it, right? Like I got the answer, because our egos get in the way of us actually asking the question. And so mentorship, sponsorship has been probably the number one, it has to be one of the most important things in my life, because without that, I don't understand God, right? Like I don't get to, if I'm talking to somebody of the cloth or somebody like, then I feel like I'm put on the spot. And if I don't have the beliefs that they do, then I'm saying, maybe I'm saying things that makes me appear like I'm more of a believer than I am, and if I'm with a sponsor, I can be like, look, I don't believe that. What do you believe? Or how do you pray? Right? Like, it's really humbling to ask somebody like, hey, how do you pray? What do you ask for? Here's a situation my wife and I are going through. And it's nice to know somebody else goes through that. Right. And that they're not like, whoa, dude, you're crazy. Like, I can't believe that you and your wife disagreed on a tablecloth, and just so it's so important. It's so unused, right? It's such a tool that's unused. I think just in general, if you went up to somebody at work and you're like, and Pony walks out his door, right? He walks right down the street or right down that side, the hallway that you see there. And there's some gray mustache guy out there and he looks like he's weathered, he's experienced some life, And Pony, you're like, hey, you mentor me. That guy's going to get freaked out, right? And he's going to go into the by the water cooler and take a sip of a water, maybe pour himself a cup of coffee and then tremor back to his office door and shut the door real quick. Because he's not going to, and Pony would feel really uncomfortable with that too. But the reality is had that guy said yes, right? And Pony was vulnerable and said, hey, here's some things I'm going through. There's a lot of magic that happens with that. With two guys talking and real their hearts, right? Like, and with nothing without harm, right? Like I can tell my sponsee like, hey, I'm not telling you this because I want to hurt you. I'm telling you this because I believe it's to be true. And there's a trust that comes with that. So, yeah, I
love that. What's interesting, Slow Pitch, is that it's almost like when you consistently start coming to F3, there's like a unspoken, I don't know if it's an invitation or just like, hey, we're all here to get better. And so then we, and you reference the Q source, right? So you have things like exhortation and correction and things that are really saying, hey, it's part of our culture to call each other out and help each other to be better. So maybe there's some informal stuff there too. And I loved your comment about the hey I got it moment. And I'm thinking of a moment, you and I last Thursday had some good conversation just about where I'm at in my recovery. And it's funny because I can read your story and I can see where I'm at. And I'm like right before the Christmas Eve blow up, which is, the timing of it, right? But I think even for people that don't, have a substance abuse issue, the blow up or the kind of this moment where you feel like you've solved some problems and you feel like you've done that, right? You've done it and you're maybe entitled, and then there's some selfishness, some pride, but it's still like not enough. It still leaves you feeling empty. And then the result is rage or whatever. For some guys, you know, that's the precursor to a substance abuse problem. What sort of insight, or I mean, I know you gave me some advice to call my sponsor, but what sort of insight or advice do you have for just so that how do we like be aware and mindful so that we don't fall into that trap of like, because I could even see it happening when a guy comes in, loses a bunch of weight, but still the like having a really nice physique is not going to satisfy you, right? So what can you provide any guidance there? I mean, I know it feels like you've got some knowledge in that area.
So maybe I can back into this, maybe I can't. I'm mowing the yard the other day, and I'm feeling disconnected, right, with whatever that is, just uncertain. Maybe I'm not connected with my wife. Maybe I'm not connected with God. Maybe I'm just ungrateful. You know, all these things, right? And so, you know, as I'm mowing, I look over and I see that I've got a white picket fence, right? Now, mind you, I want to let you guys know 15 years ago, almost, you know, I had a duffel bag of clothes really, and a car that didn't have valid license plates and wasn't able to drive, and no valid driver's license, you know, no insurance and all that kind of stuff. Right. And life was really shitty. And so you don't, you know, whatever those dreams are of life is just that you just want to not feel that way anymore. You know, it's, and for me, it wasn't, I didn't want to kill myself because I'm too chicken to do that, but I just wanted to be different. I wanted to be different. Right. And so, you know, I lived in this apartment that was just a dump, and I had just this stack of envelopes on the counter, and it created such anxiety because there was collectors, there's bills, you know, it was something that a sheriff issued me, you know, and said, hey, we're going to take, you know, everything you have. And it's like, just the weight of that. And that really sucked. And then I was sober for a year, and I had one of the best days of my life was I had a log of deer sausage, right? I didn't have a car, but I was employed, and my bank account had $60 in it, right? Like, I'm 31 years old and I have $60 in the black, you know, in my account. And my dad was going to pick me up from work. And that was the best day of my life. I felt the most inner peace I'd ever felt in like a decade, you know, or anything. And so as I'm mowing the yard just this last week, and I'm feeling just this, you know, undercurrent of all of whatever's going on, right? Just of anxiety and whatnot. And I look over and I see this white picket fence, and I'm like, this is what you dream of, right? This home, these beautiful children, you know, we got a couple dogs, the job you've really wanted, you know, a beautiful wife that's super supportive. All these things that you could have ever dreamt of when you're holding nothing but a duffel bag and you're the ward of the state. Now it's not enough, right? On the inside, it's not enough. And so, you know, one of the things that my sponsor would always say is, you know, you need to start off with some gratitude and maybe start a gratitude list, right? And so I started to walk through that, you know, as you're mowing, and kind of what advice do I give, you know, my sponsee, and I remember I had a cat that would, you know, pee in the corner of the basement here at this house, and I was telling a guy I sponsored, I'm like, I'm going to kill this cat. I'm going to beat it with a shovel because it pees on the carpet. And he goes, man, how your problems in life have really changed, huh? And I was like, look, first and foremost, you know, I don't think you've earned the right to tell me how to think. But secondly, that was the truth, right? And so, you know, there needs to be some gratitude. You need to be able to pause, which I don't do very well. You know, take that time to stop for a second, maybe ask somebody, because I think, you know, with this whole ramble on, you know, one of my prayers to God is, please give me the willingness to be helped by others. And I believe that God works through people. So if I don't take the time to ask you or share with you what's going on in my life, God doesn't have the opportunity to channel that conversation with me. And so I have to have the willingness to say that. And so that's the same thing, you know, if I'm on the yard, I have to be able to say out loud, man, I'm feeling disconnected. Here's what's going on. Somebody that says, dude, you should be really grateful. And I want you to list these things out, right? or go inside and hug your wife and tell her how special she is and what a great life you built together. You know, go down and get on your knees in front of your kids, give them a hug and tell them how special that child is, right? Like go pet that dog that you think's a huge pain in the ass, but whatever that is, you know, you have a really special life. And so that's, I guess, you know, I don't know what else to say besides that.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's exactly, I think you're right. I mean, I think that's where, you know, the only other thought I have was just like seeing a newcomer in AA or NA, right? Seeing the FNG and being reminded of where you started, where you came from, you know, has sometimes been helpful for me, but yeah, man, I think your wisdom and what's cool to me is that God, through this thing that is like, you know, a huge trial in our lives of being an addict or an alcoholic or whatever, God can take that and transform that into this wisdom that applies to so many people, which is, I love hearing you talk through that. I am curious, you mentioned faith and God, and you know, I know we've had conversations in the past, but do you feel like you've had access to more tools or just maybe more people or to help you continue to grow even outside of some of the AA meetings, whether it be fellowship or faith, or, you know, it sounds like the fitness piece we kind of talked through, but do you feel like F3 has helped give you more access to tools to grow you in your faith, or
yeah,
you know, with that?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. Here's the thing that I've come to understand is, you know, there's a lot of folks with Christian beliefs, right? And there's a lot of guys that I look up to with those beliefs, and AA in the halfway house that I was in helped me have an understanding of a higher power and a belief in God, right? My hurdle has always been that Jesus is actually the Son of God. And so and when I say that, some people cringe because they're like, whoa, you shouldn't say that out loud, right? What F3 has done is allowed me to see God work through other guys, right? There's an individual that we all know, his name's Grills. And one of the things about Grills that I'm so attracted to is his faith. And so I would discover that, you know, I kind of discovered this in nothing where he's trying to shove things down my throat, but just inquire and question and talk. And as you're running and just kind of, you feel there's just a sense of calm when I'm with him, and I can feel God really just kind of work through him at times and give me a safe space to be able to say those things. A lot of people recoil, right? Because it can be offensive if I say that to you know, a specific person. And then there's disconnect, right? And then I don't get any closer to a belief and a comfortable relationship with a God and being able to change, you know, some of my thinking, because the thing that prevents me from having a better relationship with God is my own thoughts, right? Like those, I have my own barriers, right? And so what F3 has done for me has allowed for me to run closer to the individuals that have a different faith than I do, but that have the same belief in what God is, you know, all loving, you know, forgiving, helping us, you know, guide, you know, something greater. Mine's always just the one hang up, right? And so I can tell you through those conversations with some of those folks, my perception has changed. My open-mindedness has somewhat become a little bit a bigger window. I will listen and not try to resist as much. And then I'll come home and I'll even pray and ask Jesus or God, or please show me, you know, who it is I should be, you know, connecting with, because I'm open to it, right? And that I was not before F3 at all. If you said Jesus, I was like, hey, I'm cool, you're cool. Let's keep a distance, right? But it's amazing the way God has helped me in my life, right? And I truly believe there's individuals he's put in my life that I get to run next to or be around or find attractive. And so I try to steer my car towards those folks, if that makes any sense, because I want what they have, right? I want that. I just know that I'm the reason why I don't get it, if that makes any sense.
Well, I think that makes a lot of sense. And you're really touching on this concept of F3 connecting men with each other, right, to build each other up. You know, that makes me wonder, as we continue to grow and expand, you know, feels like the past year and a half, 2 years, we've been in this season of growth, right, where we're expanding into new areas, whether that be Papillion or Millard. I guess a question for you as we expand, is there something that you would like for us to keep in mind, like a piece of originality that you hope that we don't lose, or something that we should be cognizant of as we continue to expand into these other regions?
There's no difference, right, between a man that feels on 100th and Blondo to a man that feels, you know, on 200th and Gretna Avenue, if that's even a thing, right? Or, you know, Ashland Boulevard. You know, it's the same thing. And what I would hope that never happens is that there's some sort of segmentation where we're this and you're that, right? But where we're all under the same umbrella, we're all going in the same direction. And one of the things is, you know, I've been to other different city F3 communities, and there is some differences in some things, but there's so many similarities. Like the differences sometimes are how has it started, how has it ended, right? Like, you know, within what the parameters of F3's, you know, principles are, they're all there. But the reality is I can go anywhere in the country for the most part and know that the guy that I'm next to, it has similar problems, right? Or similar experiences in life. And so that's my, you know, my thing to that is like, hey, you know, we're not different, right? When I was in the halfway house, you know, it was run by a bunch of old military guys, and I had this counselor, and he'd say, I don't care what your mom told you, you ain't that unique, right? And that always sticks with me, right? And it's like, you know, we think we have these unique problems, we think that we have these unique relationships, we think that we're different. We ain't, you know. And he would tell me, he's like, you know, you are no different than any other man in this room. And so I want that to be where people recognize that wherever you are. So
that is an excellent thing that we should keep in mind. I think F3 does like create this opportunity for us to all kind of come, and, you know, Plague says it often, it allows us to be vulnerable because we're all kind of going through some stuff together, right? It's unique in that we're all kind of coming and being beaten down at one point. That's why it's called a beat down. And then we're building each other up. So it's kind of putting us all on some even playing field. And it's important to keep that in mind. I'm certainly appreciative of you. You definitely are quite the Weasel Shaker. And I'm appreciative of all of the texts that you send out, you know, just words of encouragement, checking in, things like that. I know Plague's appreciative of you. I'm keeping him muted so he can't ask any further questions. I guess anything that we didn't cover, anything that you don't feel like we've spoken about that you want to make sure you get off your chest, any words of encouragement for the packs, anything like that?
If so, somebody shared with me one time. So we life can be really short, right? And we don't know when it's going to be taken away. And something I experienced this last year was I had a really enjoyable conversation with an individual one day, and he was gone the next day, right? I'm glad I had that experience. Not that he's gone, but that he left such a positive impact on me that day, that the next day I felt really happy that I got that encounter with him, right? And I think that there are times that we think to reach out to somebody and we don't, right? Because we're too busy. We think, God, that guy put a smile on my face today, and we don't let him know that. Or we say, hey, I appreciate the encouragement today. All right, thanks for the hug, the knuckle bump, whatever it is. And we just don't. We get caught up in the minutia of life. And somebody said, hey, if God ever whispers to you, like, hey, text Pony or think of Pony, then reach out to them. Those little whispers are really important, right? And so I think one of the things that I try to do is when I think of somebody, and I'm not 100%, I'm not even 50%, but when I think of somebody and I hear those whispers, I try to reach out to them. Sometimes I don't have their information. And so Tater Tot used to get I think he used to get so annoyed with me because I'd be like, hey, who's such and such's number? Who's such and such's number? And finally, he just gave me access to all the information. And so, because he's sick and tired of me asking him, but it really makes a difference. If not for you, if it doesn't make a difference to you, it makes a difference to me, right? Because I know that I said, hey, I care about you today and I wanted you to know it because it made a difference in my life. And so my message is if you think it, try to make it a point to connect with them because you just don't know. You just don't know that next day, right? So that's it.
Well, thank you for sharing that, man. I know that those statements, those questions, those text messages you sent have made an impact on my life, and I'm sure they're making an impact all across, the region here. So thank you. Plague, this is your opportunity for one last question, if you got any.
No, I would say, something we're trying to do with these interviews is just something that Slow Pitch referenced in his essay. And it's, so sharing your story illustrates how a hollow man or a sad clown can become a member of F3, can get comfortable with getting uncomfortable, can start to place others before themselves and connect with God or the higher power of your choosing. And I think you're that example, Slow Pitch, of how, a man's story shared and then another man's story listened to just has like this compound effect that we'll never know the impact. And so you're an inspiration to me. I know a lot of guys look up to you, and I just appreciate you, man.
Appreciate you. Both of you guys. I really do. You guys mean a lot to me. And I feel really, I've been really glad that my life's path has crossed yours. So.
Well, thank you. Thanks for being here, man. We certainly appreciate it. And I would encourage anyone who hasn't had the honor or the privilege of hearing Slow Pitch's story or just even going on a pre-run with him, I encourage you to do so. There's a lot of wisdom there and a lot to be learned, and he's willing to give it. So thanks a lot. I'll close this out on Name-A-Rama. So I am John Whitworth. I'm 30. I'm Pony Express.
Pony.
Hey, Pony. Brandon Flehardy, 35. The Plague.
Plague. And I'm Aaron Ryder. I'm 45. I'm Slow Pitch.
Hey, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Fred. I appreciate you, man.
Thanks, gentlemen. I love you guys.
Love
See
you
ya.
too. Have a good afternoon.
You too.
Later.
Bye.